We love a decent hack or bodge at GMBN, especially if they're trailside based. And of course, everyone knows that the ultimate thing to fix anything on your bike with is a cable tie. So here are 10 of the very best hacks and bodges you can do using cable ties. Hacks and bodges, hacks and bodges, hacks and bodges. First up, you've been off this massive drop, you land a bit squirrely, you break your saddle, and then it's flapping around like a flip-flop. How'd you fix it? Easy, cable tie. Make no mistake, these are not genuine fixes. These are hacks and bodges to get yourself off the trails and get home. You're going to need to replace the saddle when you get home. But you don't want to ride it like this because it's going to flap around and ultimately come off. So you want to line it up as best as you can on the bike and then simply use the cable ties just to hold it in place. Run a couple around the top here. It's not going to be the most comfortable thing to ride, but it's going to stay in one piece with any luck. All right, so it looks a bit like Gonzo's nose, but it's going to get you home. Bodge number 1. Scenario number 2, hammering down a bit of single track, hit a tree, break your brake lever clamp. How'd you fix it? Easy, cable ties. So in this case, the bolt's broken, so I'm just going to run a cable tie through here and a whole bunch of them around just to keep it in place. So I'm just going to run a couple around here just to make sure it's fairly secure, and why not run another one around here just to be safe. Cable tie is king once more. Good to go and hit the trails, get down to the bottom. Bodge number 2. So you're hammering along some alpine single track, you clout your pedal on a real big lump of rock and you manage to rip the thing off, but your axle's still exposed. How'd you fix it? Easy, cable ties. Okay, so the common thing on most sort of pedals, there will be a retaining nut holding the pedal onto the axle itself. And if you hit your pedal hard enough, it's really easy to shear that nut straight off. Now, I saw this happen to someone a while ago. They managed to rip their whole pedal off the axle and they were left with just a spindle. They managed to continue their ride to the top of the climb, but obviously it's pretty dangerous to descend like that. So you put the pedal back on at the top and using cable ties, bodged it onto the crank so you had a static platform. It meant you couldn't pedal, but it did mean you had a nice safe platform to get down to the bottom and enjoy his ride. Of course, he had to fix it when he got to the bottom. In his case, it was just a little stripped nut. It's a little 8mm nut on the end there. Replaced it, it was good to go. Bodge number 3, done. So your transmission puts up with a lot of stress when you're out on a trail, and the rear hub itself relies on a pull system. So those things it's a one-way ratchet. And every now and then, if your hub's a bit old or tired, they're going to give way and it will just spin round, which means you've got no more gears. How do you fix it? Easy, cable ties. So we're just going to imagine here that this spins both ways. So the simple hack for this is cable tying the back of the cassette to the spoke so it stops it moving. If you've got all the tools in your riding bag, you probably want to take your disc rotor off to do this, but I'm just going to try and give it a bit of a bodge while I'm here. So I just want to carefully thread the back of the cable tie around the cassette here. Pull that nice and tight. You want to repeat this process all the way around the wheel until you've effectively locked your cassette to the rear spokes. Of course, it is really fiddly to do this, but it does mean you're going to be able to lightly pedal your way back to a bike shop or someone that's going to be able to help you. Your other option, of course, is walk. Nothing wrong with walking, if you like that sort of thing. Of course, bodging your cassette like this with a bunch of cable ties means it's not going to move, so you can't freewheel. So whatever you do, this is literally a bodge so you can ride home really mellow on the pedals. But it's got the added advantage of turning your bike into a fixie. Maybe you've always wanted one. I know I haven't. Given the nature of mountain biking, you're going to be riding on some pretty rough terrain and it's your wheels that contact the ground and put up with all the abuse that you're going to dish out. So it's not surprising here and there you're going to break a spoke. What does that mean? Well, if you've got normal spoked wheels and you've got a lot of spokes, say 32, it's not going to affect things too much because you can balance out the spoke tension with the spoke key. But if you're lucky enough to own a real posh lightweight set of wheels, you can have as few spokes as 20. And if you miss one of those, it can have quite an effect on how the wheel works. So how do you fix that? Easy, with a cable tie. Now I've seen someone do this bodge recently and I couldn't believe how well it worked. So this is a pretty lightweight wheel. As you can see, the spokes are pretty spaced out. So I've got a broken spoke here. So what that means is the two spokes on the opposite side of that spoke are pulling the wheel over quite significantly. Enough in fact with this particular one to make the tyre buzz on the frame. Now I could sort of play around with the tension, but you're going to put some hop in the rim and it's just going to mess things up completely. First up, you want to get rid of the bit of the spoke that just attaches to the hub. So in this case, we've just got to whittle it out. There we go. So we won't be needing that. Put that in your riding pack for later. Now the section that's attached to the nipple here, we need this. And what we're going to need to do is take a multi-tool with a pair of pliers on, or if you've got a pair of pliers, use those, is bend this around into a hook. So that is the first step. So I've made the hook. Now what I'm going to do is hold this in place with cable ties. Then using cable ties going from this hook, I'm going to meet that with the hub. And then I'm going to use some cable ties on the hub to make sure that our effective new spoke is dished over as far as I can to make it pull from the correct side of the hub. And then that is going to enable me to get back to base and replace the spoke when I get home. Next up is to go around the hub itself. I'm just going to pull one through to where I want the spoke to be and pull from. And then I've got to join this up to here, basically. So using the cable tie like this, you make a bit of a chain of them and it's surprisingly strong. Okay, so that's the basic principle. Of course, you can reinforce this with a number of cable ties and get this as stiff as you like. But you'll actually find that this is a pretty helpful bodge because you're going to be able to get the tyre back through the frame without having to mess with the rest of the cable tension on the bike, which means when you get home, pretty much snip it off, pop in a new spoke and you're good to go. As far as bodges go, that's got to be a super bodge, surely. There's nothing in the world more annoying when you're out mountain biking than getting a puncture. It's still the problem that still plagues a good ride. Okay, so picture the scenario, you're miles from anywhere, you're on your own, so you've got no more inner tubes left, you've got a puncture, you've totally destroyed the tyre, it's got a big slash in it, which means you're stuck with one of three options. One of them is a long walk. Second option, not very good, it's going to cost you a bit of money, ride home on the rim. Third option, boom, cable tyres. Obviously in this case this is a brand new tyre, so I don't need to replace this, but what we're talking about here is you've just torn a big old hole in the tyre, so it's completely destroyed. So you can be able to ride home on the tyre by holding it onto the rim using the cable ties. If you don't do that, the tyre at some point is going to come off the rim. So it's just a way of keeping it on the rim, protecting your rim. It's going to get you to the nearest bike shop where you can pick up a tyre. Boom, bodge-tastic. Now of course this isn't the ideal solution, this is a bodge. It's called a bodge because it is a bodge. It's just to get you home. There's nothing more than that. So you're out shredding the trails and you're unlucky enough to snag your shorts and suddenly you've got this massive gaping hole in your shorts. How'd you fix it? Easy. Cable ties. So this one does involve being a bit sensible. You should probably take your shorts off to do this, but I'm going to take a chance here. And I'm just going to make a few little nicks on either side, run some cable ties through like stitches, and then hopefully my shorts will be complete again and I'll be able to just go and ride home without flapping all over the place. Just want to snip them off so they're not flapping around in the breeze. I'm using a set of cable cutters here, but use whatever you can. If you're using a knife, obviously be careful. There we go, good to go. I reckon I've got at least another handful of rides in them. You've been shredding the trails, your shoelace was undone, you snag it in a chain set, the whole thing rips and tears. So you're left with a shoe flapping around in the wind. What do you do about that? Boom, cable ties. There's no need to waste loads of cable ties, you don't need to go every hole. Every other hole will suffice. Just pull them through, pull them as tight as you feel comfortable in your shoe, snip off the ends. Yet again, the cable tie proves its worth by replacing good old-fashioned shoelaces. Again, this is just to get you home hack, but it's a pretty good one. You're out shredding a single track, but you manage to catch your peak on a low branch, and the worst thing that can possibly happen happens. You break your peak. So what do you do about that? You're stuck with three choices, surely. One is you walk home. You do a Rob Warner. Can't possibly ride your bike with a broken peak. Two, take the peak off, go bullet top. Zero anyway. Number three, cable ties. So nice and simple, it's the same principle as the clothes. Just make a few slots very carefully using your trail side knife or your multi-tool, and then you want to run the cable ties through like stitches. Bodged a few holes in here, going to run some cable ties through, join it back together. Simple bit of fettling, you just got to whittle these through. Depending on what peak you're using, the different materials, some are easier to go through and some crack really easily. Obviously this one didn't, this is just for demonstration. This is a really old helmet, so we're just using this one for our example. And there you go, peak back in working order, keeping the sun and the rain and bushes and stuff out your eyes. nicely hacked back together there using cable ties. Although my bike has got a direct mount chainring, most bikes these days have got regular chainrings that bolt on with chainring bolts, just like this crankset here. As you can see in this particular one, a couple of bolts have rattled loose. What do you do about that? Simple, cable ties. So typically, if you do manage to lose a chainring bolt, it tends to just be the one as they're rattled loose. But what normally happens on the basis of that is the other ones in turn are going to rattle loose. So the sooner you spot it, the better. Of course, if you've got spare ones in your riding pack, chuck a new one straight in, crank it up tight and make sure they're all tight, you're good to go. If not, cable ties is a really good solution. If you lose more than one bolt, what you want to do is take out the remaining chainring bolt and put them so they're opposite, leaving opposite holes, so it just distributes the force a bit better. And then simply run cable ties through the holes, crank them up tight. So there you go, that's simple, just replace a couple of chainring bolts using cable ties. Of course, the two remaining chainring bolts will take the bulk of the strain. The cable ties are there just to keep the chainring in place. Hopefully some of my cable tie related hacks and bodges have been useful to you, but of course bear in mind they are just that, they're just hacks and bodges, they're not permanent solutions for fixing your bike. If you've got any great cable tie related hacks and bodges, I'd love to know, or if you've got any better solutions, let us know in the comments below. In the meantime, if you want some hacks to make you faster, click down there, and if you want some hacks to get you home, click up here. And of course, don't forget to click on the globe in the middle to subscribe, because there's a brand new video every single day. And if you like my 10 cable tie hacks, give us a thumbs up.